Hello, everyone. It's an honor to have you all join us today. My name is Alan Bazaler, and I'm proud to lead the sales team here at BCPI. Our team is thrilled to commence this Tech Talk webinar series, where we will dive into the IT queries and concerns of our customers. These talks are vendor agnostic and meant to be an open and collective sharing of information and strategies among our team and our customers. The only requirement for these sessions is an open mind and a desire to learn and share any burning questions. Before we dive into today's questions, allow me to introduce our company, BCPI and BCPI Synivate Services. Together, we provide managed services, email and network security solutions to a wide variety of customers. Aside from network and email security, our areas of expertise include cloud computing, storage, server virtualization, and business continuity. We are proud to have our dedicated sales team here with us today, who are committed to finding the best solutions for our customers' needs. In collaboration with leading security vendors, we provide a wide range of cost-effective and easy-to-deploy solutions that cover all your security needs. But while security is clearly a focus right now, it is not the only thing we or you guys are working on. Cloud computing, virtualization, disaster recovery are just some of the other issues we deal with and will address in this and future webinars. For today's webinar, everyone will be on mute, but our goal is collective collaboration and sharing of information. So we are encouraging everyone to please open and use the Q&A box for comments, questions, and discussion. I also wanted to mention tomorrow we will be sending out a survey to get some feedback and suggestions from you guys on how to improve and make these webinars better. Hopefully you could take the time to fill it out and submit it. Thank you for joining us today. Again, without further ado, I would like to introduce Sean McGuire, who leads the Synivate Services team, who will kick off today's session. Thank you. Sean?
Thank you very much for the intro, Alan. So happy to have everybody here today. So we're just going to dive in here to just a quick overview of what we typically include in our service offering for those that might not be familiar with it. Excuse me. So we're going to run through a typical managed service offering for an all-inclusive agreement with BCPI Synivate. So this is what we feel is basically a best practice alignment for SMBs and SMEs. So we start off with our security components. Endpoint detection and response. We're going to talk about this today. Managed detection and response, firewall and security monitoring, security awareness and training, Cisco umbrella web filtering, and malware protection, dark web monitoring, vulnerability scanning. We'll take care of all the monitoring, right? So that's going to be server hardware monitoring, application service monitoring, workstation and laptop hardware monitoring, network monitoring. We move on to management and DR. We'll handle all the Windows patch management, third-party software patching, server maintenance, workstation backups through OneDrive, help desk support, outage support for those emergency issues, on-site support after remote diagnosis, and our standard response time is within 2 hours for standard response and within an hour for critical outages. We provide a dedicated VCIO service and quarterly business meetings, and then we handle all of the change requests, so onboardings, offboardings, permission changes, so on and so forth. So really, in summary, I mean, this is just every component of an IT aspect within an organization, from the frontline help desk support all the way to the VCIO responsibilities. So that covers all of the management guidance and direction. So we're going to go ahead and just jump right into, of course, being the Tech Talk Tuesday here, we have topics. So this is our second webinar here, and we're going to hopefully have some more topics to talk about today. But let's start with MDR and EDR. So let's just start with a quick poll. So how much do you know today about MDR and EDR? Excellent. So just to summarize what we're talking about managed detection and response and endpoint detection and response. So MDR is a managed cybersecurity service that combines technology and human expertise to detect analyze, respond to, and remediate cyber threats. MDR provides a holistic approach to threat management. Important to note the human element of managed detection and response. It's really the most important element of MDR and what makes MDR MDR. On the other hand, EDR is a category of security tools focused on detecting, investigating, and mitigating suspicious activities on hosts and endpoints. So, in essence, EDR is a piece of the puzzle, and MDR is the service that provides a complete solution. So, both work together to provide a best practice, holistic solution for endpoint security. So, let's move on to our next slide. So we know what EDR is, and it's essentially a replacement for antivirus, or you could look at it side by side, and that's what we're going to talk about here. What makes EDR EDR, and why is it different from a traditional antivirus? So traditional antivirus or AV software, like McAfee, Norton, any of the endpoint software that we've seen that's been around for a long time, and EDR might seem similar, but they really serve quite different functions. So traditional AV primarily operates on known threats using signatures to identify and block malware. Its focus is more on prevention, right? And conversely, EDR doesn't just focus on prevention, but it provides detection, response, and continuous monitoring. It's capable of identifying not just known threats, but unknown threats, threats that might be lingering, threats that might be sitting idle, waiting for the right time to open up on your network. Zero-day threats through behavior analysis, essentially offering a more proactive and comprehensive security approach. So antivirus programs have traditionally leaned heavily on a method known as signature matching. We just talked about this, signature-based AV, to identify threats on a device. So this involves the antivirus software contrasting files with a database of recognized malicious files. And when there's a match, it's identified as a threat at that point. On contrary, EDR software fundamentally changes this model by predominantly using behavior analysis and machine learning to monitor the endpoint activities. For instance, if a PowerShell process is initiated by a Microsoft Word document, executing an unrecognizable script, that raises a red flag, right? That file will then be marked and isolated until the authenticity of that process is confirmed. So Microsoft Word in and of itself is not a threat. QuickBooks in and of itself is not a threat. But if there's a supply chain attack on, Intuit or QuickBooks and something is injected in the code, EDR with MDR is going to take care of that because it's going to look at what the process is doing, not just that it trusts Microsoft Word or it trusts QuickBooks because it's from a known publisher. So the EDR is less reliant on signature files, basically, and that equips it to respond effectively and to emerging new and more sophisticated threats. So this is just evolving, right? We have to evolve with the ever-changing landscape, and sticking with a traditional antivirus product, there's so much that you're leaving behind and so much that you're leaving for threat actors to expose. So just some more facts about EDR here. So EDR entails a real-time surveillance and detection of threats, including those not easily identifiable or straightforward or defined by conventional antivirus. Since EDR is behavior-centric, it can spot unknown threats based on unusual behavior. So it gathers and analyzes data to identify threat patterns and then alerts the organization, the MDR team, your IT security team, your MSP about the threat. So EDR's forensic capabilities aid in determining the events during a security incident. So it's really, really going to be helpful for you to break down what happened and see exactly that chain, that threat chain of when it started and how it got to where it was going to and what ended up happening. Its forensic capabilities are really, really helpful. So EDR can isolate suspicious or infected items, often using a sandboxing technique to verify a file's safety without causing any disruption to the user's system whatsoever. EDR might also incorporate automated remediation or elimination of specific threats. And so we compare this to antivirus being signature based, right? So it can only detect known threats. So if the program doesn't match or align with the signature, antivirus is going to alert on that. The problem is just as things are constantly changing, your traditional antivirus is just not enough because it's not going to detect what the program is doing. It's just looking at the program in and of itself. And really that's just not enough for today's, evolving threat landscape. We do see a lot applications, and whether it be ransomware, malware, whatever it is, a lot of times it's not executed at the same time, and it might sit idle. So somebody might download something and it might sit on their machine for a little while until it has time to replicate across the network, and nobody knows that it exists if you have a traditional antivirus until it's too late, right? And it's spread across the network, and then the whole network is out at once because all the machines are triggered at once. So the point is that these programs will kind of sit idle, and EDR is going to pay very close attention to, when it's downloaded, where is it downloading to, where is it copying its files to, what processes is it looking at, what exactly is this doing? Not just, is this safe or is this not safe, but what is it doing? So it really helps with 0 days, right? And it really helps with potentially, supply chain attacks, issues within software. Maybe your software has a way of downloading, third-party applications or something from the web, and then so it downloads something as part of the software, and maybe it's trusted, and a traditional antivirus would trust that, but EDR is not going to do that. So antivirus, it's really just a much more, basic approach of handling straightforward viruses, worms, trojans, malware, adware, spyware. It's just not what we're seeing today, right? This is not what organizations are concerned with, just because it's not the most predominant in what we're seeing out in the wild, as we say. So in summary, EDR over antivirus is a huge upgrade. And then when you build onto EDR with MDR, you're aligning your organization or institution with cybersecurity best practices. So we can move on to the next slide and talk a little bit more about what makes EDR EDR and what some of the unique features of EDR are. So basically, we know that EDR is going to be superior to a traditional antivirus just because of the machine learning components of an EDR product. But let's talk a little bit more about some of the capabilities. So two of the powerful capabilities that you're going to get with EDR are going to be rollback or recovery, and then you're also going to get a deep visibility component. Now, some of the EDR vendors price these in different tiers or packages, where like you can get EDR at its most basic level, and then you can get a medium or high. So some of these features, depending on the vendor that you're working with, might not be included. But that's, of course, where we'll come in and really help you navigate this and make sure that you're getting the best solution. So again, as Alan mentioned, right, we're not going to talk about a specific vendor. We're talking about EDR and MDR as a whole and what types of features are included in these products. So the rollback feature would allow you to revert an infected system back to its pre-attack state, which is a very valuable tool during a cyber incident, right? So rolling back a machine is going to give you the ability to, maybe you set a policy that when a threat is quarantined or when a threat is confirmed, you want it to automatically roll back, or you want to roll back after a certain period of time. So it's like a system snapshot, if you will, or I wouldn't say a backup because it's not a backup, but what it's doing is, because EDR really pays so close attention to what the threat or the confirmed or unconfirmed threat is doing on your machine or endpoint, it knows what it did so it can revert that. So that's essentially what the rollback is. So if it goes in and makes changes to the registry and installs a program, it's going to be able to roll back and revert those changes, assuming that it's been quarantined by the EDR. It hasn't done any more. It hasn't basically done any further damage, right? You have your device isn't, cryptoed, and your files aren't locked under ransomware. It's going to automatically revert that. So a good EDR would prevent that from happening in the first place. But some of the changes and breadcrumbs, if you will, that it would leave behind, the rollback feature is going to allow you to revert the system back to its pre-attack state. And then deep visibility will give detailed insight into what's happening across the endpoints. So it'll help you understand the root cause of the attack, the scope of the breach, and how to effectively respond. So this will empower organizations to have control over their network and provide a proactive approach to threat hunting. So a little bit more technical, but if you do have, an internal security team or an internal security analyst, or somebody who's responsible for security within the organization, they would have access to the deep visibility within the EDR product. So they'll be able to see sort of a timeline of what happened. File was downloaded to explorer.exe from, Edge, from Microsoft Edge or from Google Chrome. And it did this, it did that, it made this change to the system. So that's really what the deep visibility is going to give you. It's going to give you a full capture of what's happening on the endpoint. So deep visibility in and of itself, yes, it's a great feature, but you really need to empower that, right, with somebody who's able to manage the product for you. And that's where MDR comes in. So where managed detection response comes in and really helps build on that, because the MDR, threat teams are going to have access to the rollback. They're going to have access to recovery features. They're going to have access to the deep visibility, and they're going to really be able to use those tools, at their full feature set and be able to take care of these issues as they come up. So I think we can move to the next slide. So the final stop with MDR and EDR is understanding the synergy between MDR and EDR. So while EDR provides the tools and the framework necessary for an effective threat detection and response solution at the endpoint level, right? Managed detection and response, MDR, brings in the human expertise for analysis, triage, and response, leveraging the power of EDR. So when integrated together, they provide a comprehensive security solution that combines advanced technology with human intelligence. So MDR can use that granular data from the EDR solution to perform deeper analysis and more effective responses. So the integration of MDR and EDR leads to an enhanced security posture, leveraging organizations and making them better equipped to deal with the ever-evolving threat landscape. So an EDR solution without MDR in and of itself, with the right internal teams in place, with 24/7 monitoring, if you're doing that in-house and it's being done internally, then that's probably going to do it for you, right? Because you're going to have somebody available and you don't need MDR because somebody's there 24/7 watching those alerts. The challenge is just with smaller and medium-sized organizations having a fully staffed, 24/7 network operations center NOC is just not realistic. So partnering with a company that provides this service, the MDR service, is the wise decision to make. So the MDR team is going to review all of the EDR alerts, and they're going to look at, okay, well, maybe this EDR alert came in from this workstation. We have another one from another workstation. So piecing those, pieces of the puzzle together, they might immediately elevate that security incident and, maybe upgrade it to priority 1. Maybe it's a low type of an incident, but it's on 2 machines, and that together, they'll take that as a higher priority and do a little bit more of a deeper dive. But just having a human looking at these as they come in is really important. So EDR is great, and you can, sort of turn up the dials, if you will, on EDR and set it to the maximum, security and quarantine as much as possible. And that's fantastic. But if you're not looking at the alerts and you're not reviewing what's coming through, you're really leaving a lot on the table and not really understanding, what threats you're dealing with day to day. So that's where having the MDR in place really helps, because those teams are going to review those incidents. And in many cases, the EDR products that are on the market have like a quarantine, a machine isolation feature. So meaning that the machine, when there's a threat that's quarantined and it's elevated and reviewed by the MDR team or the internal team, the decision at that point could be made to isolate the machine from the network. So the machine can only talk to the EDR and or MDR. So the machine becomes fully isolated, and it's only talking to the EDR product so that you can work on remediating that without risking, or exposing the rest of the network to whatever made its way onto that endpoint. So both solutions together really help provide a much more comprehensive cybersecurity solution. I think we can probably move on to some Q&A. And so basically, I would ask if anybody has any questions, post them in the Q&A. I will answer them or do my best to answer them. And also, it doesn't have to be just questions about, MDR or EDR. We know what the purpose of these webinars are, right? This is for you, our customers, to have an opportunity to ask questions about anything. And if it can't be answered today, we'll get back to you. But definitely feel free to ask any questions here in the Q&A about anything related to cybersecurity, best practice, issues that you're facing. Like Alan said, this is not just EDR and MDR. There's disaster recovery, and there's just so much that goes into this, right? And there's a lot that we can help with. So anything that you feel is prominent or something that you're working on as an organization or institution, feel free to post it here, and we'll answer it together. So we'll leave a few minutes here to throw in any Q&A.
We got a couple of questions coming in. I think, MDR is such a hot topic for everybody. I saw a question come in.
In your opinion, is MDR worth it? Yeah. So if you have, like I said, if you have an IT department that you have a fully staffed, network team and everybody's reviewing all of the alerts, 24/7, MDR is not really worth it. But if you don't have that, which it's very rare that we see organizations or institutions have that, fully staffed security team available. If you don't have that, MDR is absolutely worth it, because EDR in and of itself is fantastic, but the EDR product can't do everything. And when you have multiple machines that are impacted, that's where having the MDR solution in place really helps. Because if you have something that comes through on machine number 1, it gets quarantined. Machine number 6, it gets quarantined, and it's 2 a.m., right? It's the middle of the night. Well, if nobody's reviewing it, but the MDR team is, they might decide to isolate those hosts, and you might give them the capability and you might give them the approval to do that. And so now they isolate those two hosts. So they're kind of stopping this in its tracks. It doesn't matter if it's getting quarantined. You still don't want it to spread across the network, right? It's just not something that you're going to wake up, Tuesday morning, Monday morning and feel great about, is seeing that all your machines are quarantined. So we obviously want to do everything that we can, and having the MDR solution in place will really help add in that human element that can say, well, I think this needs to be isolated. This is significant, or this is not significant. And having that team available, it really helps, put your mind at ease and not have to worry about these things over, nights and weekends and holiday weekends. And it's just, things always happen at the worst time, right? So having the MDR team there available to take care of this, waking up to an email in the morning that says, hey, the MDR team took care of this, this, and this overnight. Here's the priority. Here's what we did. I mean, what more could you ask for? So I think in today's day and age, with the threats that we're facing and the reputational, impact and everything that comes out of that, I think it's absolutely worth it. We get another one here for MDR and cyber insurance. Do I need it? At this point in time, cyber insurance providers, we have not seen they haven't typically required MDR, right? So they want to make sure you have EDR, but it started with, do you have antivirus? Is it monitored? Over the years, that turned into, do you have EDR? Now they want to know what EDR you have. So it's very possible that we'll see over the next couple of years, MDR being required. We don't really have a vendor that we recommend specifically for MDR in for EDR. And that's really the whole point of these tech talks here, is so that we can kind of talk about the product as a whole. But I would say reach out to your salesperson, your account manager, and talk to us about what you have, right? Because certain products may work better for certain customers. There might be certain features that one vendor offers that really is tailored to your organization a little bit better. So I can't really recommend a vendor in particular, but there are a lot of good vendors that are out there that are providing MDR services layered on top of EDR services. I don't see, I'm watching for any additional questions here. Also, if you didn't post a question in the Q&A, or send in a question right on today's webinar, if you can send us or reply to us when we send out the recording, just some information on what you might want to see and hear on the next webinar, we'd love to hear your feedback, because we'd like to just kind of open up the dialogue to what items you're working on and your challenges, right? Any other questions that you're seeing, Alan or Arden?
Yeah. I saw someone ask, how does it integrate with firewalls?
Okay, yep, I see that now. So MDR as a whole typically is designed to provide a network operations center, monitoring element, management element wrapped around EDR, which is all endpoint based, right? So it's Windows and Mac endpoints. How does it work with the firewall? So depending on the MDR provider that you're working with, or the vendor, or whoever you're working with for managed detection and response. I mean, obviously we do provide. We ask the question: is there an MDR provider vendor that you guys recommend? We provide this EDR and MDR service as part of our managed service offering, and I talked about that when I first started talking here, when you had the first slide up about what we include. So we do have vendors that we include, and we bake that into our managed service offering. So obviously talk to us more about that. But if you're looking for this a la carte as a service, that's kind of to my point of maybe the vendor might vary based on, what products and solutions you have. And that ties directly into this question about firewalls. Because a lot of times the MDR provider would offer that firewall monitoring and management as a service. So what they'll do is they'll take the firewall logs and they'll send the firewall logs into the same NOC team that's reviewing the MDR alerts and use that together. And that can be used for firewall logs, Office 365 logs. All of the different MDR providers have different feature sets and things that they're going to offer, right? So if you can get the firewall logs in team that's looking at the MDR logs, I mean, obviously that's going to be an improvement over just having access to the endpoints. If they can look at the firewall and they can look at Office 365 and they can look at everything you have within your environment, that's going to help them really determine, how did this threat come in and how can they stop it, right? If it's an email threat, having access to everything empowers that team instead of them just having access to the endpoints.
We've had some people deploy the MDR solutions. It's really still early in the game to see what the results are. I know they feel it's an extra layer that makes them feel comfortable. So that's certainly one thing. Shaw was talking about the alerts. We see a lot of alert fatigue. Sean, you want to talk about that quickly?
Yeah, so just managing EDR in and of itself, there's a lot to do, right? Patching and dealing with day-to-day operations of managing the EDR. So there is a lot of alert fatigue in general, right? So having somebody who's reviewing all of that for you and only bringing to you, what the issues are is really important, because when you're going from, the traditional antivirus to an endpoint detection and response solution, you might get more alerts because it's looking at more items and it's analyzing what's happening on the endpoints. So having somebody look at those alerts for you is obviously going to be really important and helpful so that you don't just end up with, alert after alert, and then you easily miss an alert that's important because you're seeing, 5, 10, 15, 20 a day, right? So having somebody review those for you is really helpful because when they reach out to you, it's like that when you get that email or that phone call from that MDR provider, okay, something needs to be looked at, right? There's something serious, and you just immediately know you've got to jump in action and work with them to figure it out and take care of the issue. But when you get an email or an alert from the traditional EDR, you might get a lot of noise, and so that is going to contribute to alert fatigue. And so having somebody actually review them for you is really helpful. For sure. Yeah, so I hope that the deep dive here into EDR and MDR was helpful. I mean, it's like I said, it's one topic. There's a lot that we're here to talk to you about, and that we're happy to answer any questions, and not just today, but obviously moving forward. But I hope that this was helpful to provide some more information about EDR and MDR because you just look at it and it's like, okay, do we need this, right? Is it worth it? If we're paying for EDR, why do we have to pay for MDR? So I hope that it was useful to try to help see how both products complement each other. Of course, you really need the MDR you really need the EDR in order to get MDR services, right? So, but they both work together. And EDR in and of itself is fantastic. It's a huge upgrade from traditional antivirus and really table stakes. I mean, you really, really should have it, really need to have it. And then the MDR is really just going to layer on top of that. And really, at the end of the day, it's providing you peace of mind and knowing that somebody is managing and monitoring these alerts so that you are not going to be a statistic because somebody is watching it 24/7 for you.